I'm a huge fan of just your voice and what you put out there into the world and the representation that you put out there, how you're not afraid to speak your truth no matter what. Recently I remember there was the news anchor or news person that decided that they were going to go at you, wrong person to have gone at, and how that transitioned. I watched the whole thing unfold, and I'm just in awe. I'm in awe of you, and I have a lot of respect for the things that you do. So with that, Jose, I'm going to let you do your introduction and just speak on the greatness that you are and what it is that you do.
Oh my gosh. Well, before you do that, I also have to acknowledge how much I absolutely love you and I love watching you come up on my feed, especially in the moments. It's like It's like when you need to show up on people's feeds. And there's not many people that I stop at every single time they come across my feed, and you are one of them. And it really just allows me, there's something about the way that you operate and show up that just has everything else blocked out for me in that moment. And the wisdom and the knowledge and everything that you are giving to people is so needed right now. And I'm also a very big fan of yours, so I am very happy to be here with you right now talking.
Oh, I
So there's
love it.
that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, please, you're welcome. So I'm Jose Rolon. I go by NYC Gay Dad on all social media platforms. And I am a New York City wedding planner. I live in Brooklyn Heights with my three children, Avery, Lila, and London. And I don't know, like I think the way that uh, my journey is now at the moment is pretty great. And but it took more than just something to get here, and I believe we're just going to dive into that. So where do you want me to
Yeah,
start? You want me to start from the beginning?
I do. I really do.
Yeah.
I want you to start from the beginning.
Yeah. So, I met my husband Tim back in 2008, and I we fell in love, and it was magical. And the one caveat was that, something I don't think I've shared a whole lot. The one caveat was that he was somebody who did not want to have children. He said on date number two or three, he was like, I don't want to have kids. And his reasoning was, I'm selfish. He was 10 years older. And, um, and I remember that feeling really devastating to me because I knew that I wanted to have children. I lost both my parents many, many years ago. I grew up as an only child, and there was this need that that was within me that knew that I wanted to parent and to raise kids, and I've always loved kids. But Tim was so phenomenal that it was worth the sacrifice. I felt at the time it was worth the sacrifice of not wanting to have children, because the life I was living with him was pretty great. Um, and what ended up happening is we got married. So we were together for 3 years, and then he proposed in London on the London Eye Ferris wheel. It's one of the reasons one of my daughter's name is London Rose, and um, and he, about 6 months after getting married, he sat down next to me at this coffee shop in Chelsea and said, on 17th Street, and he said, "So I've been thinking. I just want you to know that I saw this interview with Elton John and his partner, and they were talking about surrogacy. And I want you to know that I am open to being open about the possibility of having kids." Ay, ay, ay. When he said this, I
Wow.
lost it. I even dismissed myself. We were outside in a cafe, and I dismissed myself and went downstairs to the bathroom. And I remember just going on the floor and just sobbing and just crying because I couldn't believe it. Because I knew Tim, once he said he was thinking about something, he was going to go for it. So fast forward, we decided to go through surrogacy, and we went through we got an egg donor. We had the eggs frozen. She's Brazilian, so all three kids are half Brazilian, and and we got pregnant, and Avery was born, and Tim ended up being a far more phenomenal parent than I think I was at the time. I think for me, I always knew I wanted to be a parent. So for me, things I felt like they came naturally, or it was just, all right, this is what it is. And I think for him, his mind was blown and all his senses were like all over the place in the most beautiful way. He just loved it. He even wouldn't want me to get up in the morning. He'd rather, spend those 2 hours before he had to go to work with Avery when he was born. And so 2 months in, he came out of the bedroom with Avery in his arms and he said, "Babe, you know what I'm thinking?" And I was like, pizza or Chinese? I thought he was talking about food. And he was like, "I think we should have more." And I'm like, "What?" I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And we did. We went for it again. And this time we knew that we were going to put, the first time we did a little shake and bake. We did one with his sperm and one with mine. And it was clear when Avery came out of Blanquito, a white boy, we knew that he was not biologically mine. So we knew the second time around, I'm like, "You're not in this race this time." And uh, we got pregnant again very quickly with the same surrogate. And we found out on week 10 that we were pregnant with twins. And I was freaking out. I'm the one who wanted to be a dad, and I'm the one that's freaking out. And he was like, "All right." It was like, "We got this." And that was at the 10-week mark. And then at the 11-week mark, he went on a business trip to Pennsylvania. And I couldn't get a hold of him that day. I was in the middle of a Christmas, the juxtaposition of what I'm about to tell you. I'm at this Christmas event in the wedding industry. There's hot cocoa. We're hanging candy canes. We're being videotaped for this business. Mariah Carey's playing in the background. Like, it's just the most happiest, joyous event. And I get a phone call, based from the Pennsylvania PD that he had passed away.
Mm.
And it was a heart attack in his sleep. And um, and I, as you could just imagine, I I just collapsed. I remember just yelling that, "Tell me you're joking. Tell me this is a joke. Tell me this is a prank call." And I had to get carried out of the party. And that happens at when we were just 11 weeks pregnant with the twin girls. I say twin, I shouldn't say girls. We didn't know it was girls at the time. And as you can imagine, like, all of this stuff is, rushing through me. And, at the same time, you know, not only are you just struck that the love of your life just passed away, but now you have twins on the way. And, I think for me at the moment, it was very clear that I was going to abort because I just thought, who am I to raise these three kids on my own? There's just absolutely no way, financially, emotionally. And yeah, I'll never forget. It was the sixth day, and which happened to be the last day I can make that decision because at 12 weeks, you can no longer make the decision to abort, according to the state of Georgia, where my kids were born. And it was the sixth day. I woke up. It happened to be the day of Tim's funeral,
Mm.
and it was still dark out. And something just hit me. I realized that, gosh, Avery just lost his father. And I thought, what if I always get paranoid? What if something happens to me? In that moment, I was like, what if something does happen to me? Then, I would leave Avery alone in this world. And that's, something the thought of that was just felt really devastating. And so not only did I decide in that moment to follow through the pregnancy, but I actually announced that we were pregnant while giving my husband's eulogy. No,
Mm.
nobody knew that we were pregnant at that time. And, you know, I think that to this day, it was, It was, is, and will always be the best decision I ever made, to follow through. And, I think in that moment, you talk a lot about manifesting. I think in that moment, it was really important for me to share this in church in front of, I don't know how many people were there at the time, 400 or 500 people. I don't know. Um, we're living in New York, so we hear some
Mm-hmm.
sirens.
Mm.
Um, I think it was so important for me in that moment to share it because, I you've got a room full of people that have your attention, and people in the room that both love me and love Avery and loved Tim. And if I was making that decision right then and there, first of all, I'm putting it out to the universe that I am following through the pregnancy. So there's that. I've already manifested that into the world. But then, making sure that I do get the love and the support. And I have to tell you, it has been 10 years, 11, and as Avery's 11, the love and support of so many of the people in that room is still very much alive and well. And I think like for that first year, my who we affectionately call Uncle Ryan, who happens to be my college sweetheart, it's purely platonic now, but he even moved in for a year to help me take care of the kids. I had my nanny, which was great. When the girls were born, I didn't mess around, and I got a night nurse, and I I I just ended up getting a lot of love and support from it. And what's interesting too, as we, you could interrupt me at any time. Um, I think that for me, because the reason why and this is something I haven't shared too often, the reason why Tim and I work so well is that, when we first met, I had already lost my parents years before. And Tim had already lost his partner a couple years before. So when him and I came to the table, we fully understood what it meant to seize every moment, to be grateful for every moment. And they always say like when you're meeting somebody, you sort of peel the layers and the onions off. For us, I think from that first meeting, we started raw. And I think oftentimes what happened whenever I would go on dates, people would be like, "Oh, so where do your parents live?" And I have to give them their dead speech. And for me, it was nice to sit across from somebody who uh, I neither one of us had to feel bad for the other person. We both understood that we were both grateful that I had my parents for as long as I did, and he was grateful that he was able to be in this loving gay relationship for 15 years, and just really to be grateful. And so that's why we were so magical together. And so, for me, when Tim passed away, I there was a couple of things I understood and I didn't understand. And I would say this is one of the reasons why I love what you do, because my experience of Tim passing was one of great anger. It was one where I felt like I lost a lot of faith because in my mind, and there's some lessons that I've learned from this, but in my mind at the time, I thought that when I met Tim, it meant this is why my parents passed away.
Mm.
It meant that, because I made very hard, difficult decisions. And after my parents passed away. And I know that if had they not passed away, there's no way a path would have led me to Tim. And so in my mind, that was the answer. That's why my parents passed away, so that I could, fulfill this need and this love that I have with this other human being. So then when Tim passed away, only knowing him for 6 years, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, how is this even possible? Like, how is, I thought I made it. And I do think that whether you agree with me or not, that's certainly the mistake that I made is like, oh, I made it. I can rest. I'm good. And what the big lesson that I got from losing Tim, and something I talk about a lot today, is that nothing is permanent. Nothing lasts. the good and the bad. And so, the one thing I always say is like, I'm in my permanent now, like right now, this moment I'm having with you. It's this permanent now that you and I are having. But outside of that, we don't know what's going to happen a few minutes from now, 5 minutes from now, 10 minutes from now. And so for me, that was like a the bigger lesson that I learned after Tim passed away. And it has served me well. Whenever I think that I have faltered in trying to be present and in trying to understand the things that I should attract and deserve, I've caught myself in some really bad relationships. One which resulted in, uh, let's just say, a restraining order.
Mm.
There was some mental issues there, and then and I think that and then and then the one right before that was a person who dealt with a lot of substance abuse. And I think what was happening is that I was really forgetting. I think I just needed to sort of swing to the other side of the pendulum after Tim passed away, and I needed to find something that wasn't like him. And because I do think it's important not to compare when you're finding new love. And I just veered really far off that, and I started to attract what I used to attract when I was younger, right? I used to attract all the things that were, you know, toxic, and all of that manifested from the relationship my family has. And so I really lost myself there for a while in terms of dating and relationships. I feel like I had the parenting thing down. I knew how to be present with my children. I knew how to be present with work, but not know so much in relationships. Um, Now, I'm in this really wonderful relationship with, his name is Thomas. And, it's interesting because I think that when we lose somebody, and this isn't just in death, right? When we go through a divorce, or, we tell ourselves we don't want to make comparisons. I mean, I don't know. It is different when you're single, and it is different when you divorce and when you lose someone that you weren't, right. Like when you divorce, there was things there that weren't working, but when you lose someone, there were many things that were working, hopefully, right. And for Tim and I, it was, but the valuable lesson there was that, oh, wait a minute. But there were things that I loved about Tim. He did respect me. He did think that I was funny. And he did think that I was, one of the things I loved, he thought that I was like boyish. He found me to be boyish and silly. And why wouldn't I look for those types of things in a new partner? So a couple years ago, once I was single for a few years to have some self reflection, I was able to find someone who does, in some ways, remind me of Tim, because this person, in the same way as Tim, does respect me, doesn't raise his voice, he doesn't yell, he's not disrespectful, he is loving, and he's wonderful to my children. And these are all the things that I know Tim would have been too. And so I think, that has been, really wonderful. Not to say we don't have our moments, we all do. But I feel like I finally arrived at a place where I feel really good with love, life, and work. But it was definitely like a journey to get here.
To me, it was interesting that when you met Tim, he was your person. So you knew, you're like,
Yeah.
we connected. I know he's got what I desire in somebody. And it is so good that I am willing to not have children because he doesn't want to have children. But that desire never actually went away. You were just willing to put it to the side, to
Yeah.
kind of like suppress it because there's so much here. But it didn't go away because when he said, I'm open to being open, you were just floored. Like you had to remove yourself to cry because it came back. It was like, wait, this actually is still important to me. And it's almost like it was um a release. It was like you got
Yeah.
to just release that this is a desire for you, and now it gets to be a reality for you as well.
Yeah.
So I loved that that was your expression of it, because that was
Yeah.
big. That was like a
Because
big like release.
I really saw it as like, okay, I'm in this relationship I feel fulfilled in. And then, him sharing that, yes, I agree that all of those desires came flooding in. I also saw it as like this massive bonus. It's like,
Hmm.
oh wait, I arrived at this place where I'm good. And then
I
this
get to
comes
have
into
it.
play. I'm like,
Yeah, I
what?
get to
Like
have
I
it
already thought
all.
my life was great.
Yeah.
I get to have it all.
You
Yes.
get to have it all. And then the
Yeah.
beauty of seeing him unfold into this loving father, and you're admiring it. You're like, wow,
Uh,
not only is he a loving partner, and I'm the one who wanted the kids, and he agreed he wants kids too, but now I get to see him like shine as a father. That was
yeah.
completely unexpected. Like you probably just thought he'd be like, "All right, well, we are father to our children," but you didn't expect this like, oh, "I want more." Like let's do it
No
again.
way. Oh my gosh.
Another
It was,
bonus.
yeah, another bonus for
Another
sure.
bonus. I'm also blown away over the fact that he had lost a partner. And so he had had that experience of losing somebody. You had
Yeah.
lost your parents, and he had lost a relationship, like a romantic relationship that, from what you said, it was long. It seemed like about, what, 15 years? And I'm sure he must have talked about it. And then you find yourself in the same situation,
Yeah.
losing him. Like
Yeah.
that had to be, I mean, I just get chills as I just said that, literally. Like I like my body just went like, yeah, because it's almost like you got to experience him while also hearing what it was like to have lost somebody. And
Yeah.
then, and then you lose him. And
Hmm.
the unfairness of what that must have felt like to be like, how do I have everything? I have my kids. We're having more kids. I have my partner. He's loving. He's a good father, and I lose that.
Yeah.
I can see where the anger. That I would have been angry. I would have been so angry at the
Yeah.
unfairness of that.
Yeah.
I also was struck by that you announced that you were having two more kids. And it almost felt like that announcement was, I'm saying it out loud. So now it is real. Like it's real. It's actually happening because I'm saying this to 400 people.
Mm.
It's like almost putting the stamp on this is actually going to happen. And I'm saying it out loud. Like, did it
Yeah.
feel like that when you were saying it?
Honestly, think I was just so out of, I was just in a whole other, I can't, it's hard for me to describe that moment. I had seen a video I didn't know that it was recorded, the
Mhm.
eulogy and the service. And I finally sat down like 3 years later to see it and to hear it. And the moment I announced that uh, we were pregnant with the twins, you could hear this very audible gasp from everybody. And you can hear like, you could hear people that, they were crying. I couldn't hear any of that. For me, it was just this sea of people. I remember our surrogate came from Georgia and our family. I I don't remember. I know I cracked jokes in the eulogy too. Like I don't remember hearing a laugh. I was just sort of in my body, not in my body, and I don't know. It's hard to describe that moment, but it was. I just knew that it was a now or never thing. Like I have to proclaim this right here, right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like this is happening. This is real. This is my life. And wow, you were also processing the death of Tim while getting ready to
Yeah,
have two more kids. at the
Yeah.
same time, and just the two different extremes of emotions. How did you balance that? Because there's an extreme of emotion of I'm so angry. This I lost everything I thought I had, and then I'm welcoming two more kids in the next 7 months. How did you manage to balance that?
Yeah, I think, something I talk about grieving on stage, and the three, I often talk about this, superpower of having unbridled strength, right? Like, I'm not talking about uncontrolled, like, complete unbridled strength. And the way that I think that you get that is with these sort of like three pieces of armor. And the three that I describe are, having a strong support system. That's first and foremost. Um, you know, in that, it's like, you know, I always tell people when you're going through something, a divorce or a breakup, or, don't call that friend that's, is going to binge drink with you at noon. Like, call someone who is going to be a legitimate, strong support system and that's going to lift you up. And so for me, that was first and foremost. The second one for me is, and this one, it tends to be a bit of a controversial one, but I think it's really important to be unapologetically selfish. um, I think it's the only way to come out to the other side to be the victor and to be able to be there on the other side for other people, because and I did get criticized for it. I did. I think what happens is, like, we've all have been through our own grieving in some way, shape, or form, but it's very easy to forget what it's like when the other person is somebody is still grieving, right? So, it's kind of like, how is that person still not wanting to go out of the house? Or how can that person go off on a trip? I remember going on a trip within, I think, 4 months, 3 4 months. I decided to go to Mexico and with a couple friends of mine, and some people within my support system were critical of that. They're like, "How can you do this?" I should say, actually, it was when the girls had arrived, not long after the girls arrived, and I was like, it is a choice that I'm making. It is, I need this for me. I need, there's a lot of things that I feel are happening right now. And if I don't do this for me, then this isn't going to work. And I admire those parents. I hear sometimes a lot of parents say, um, you know, I, my kids come first. And, and I think certainly in my situation right now, my kids do come first. But, I respect the couples, and Tim and I had this philosophy that we should put each other first, because if we're good, then the kids are good, right? And so that's how I've always felt. So certainly during through the grieving process, especially, I thought it was okay for me to be unapologetically selfish and take this space, away from the kids, because I know that when I come back from my trip, I'm going to be 10 times better for my children and more present for my children than being surrounded by three dirty diapers 24/7 around the clock. And the third thing I would say is having a strong sense of humor. Sense of humor for me, as you know, is everything. And so, a good example of this was, you know, I had a preference of what I wanted for the twin girls. When I found out it was twins, my preference was, okay, I've got a son, so I don't like the idea of having girls, but I probably should have one. So I guess a boy and a girl would be my preference. But if it's not a boy and a girl, then give me two boys so that I could have three boys. This is what I want, because the idea of a girl at any point is wild. So I flew down to Georgia with Tim's sister, and they were so wonderful down in Valdosta, Georgia. That could go in one of two ways when you have a gay couple going down south through surrogacy. they loved Tim and I. They thought we were the bee's knees, and they
Oh.
thought we were like, it was just really wonderful the way we were treated. Still friends with them to this day. And this one nurse, when I was down there with my with Tim's sister after Tim passed away to find out the sex of the twins, when she looked and she said, "Well, it looks like you're gonna need two bonnets." I said, "Are you fucking kidding me?" I was so upset. I could not believe that now the universe is going to throw me with two girls.
Not just
And
one. You're getting two.
not one, I'm getting two. And I was like, I had to sit with that for a while. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up having a photo shoot because it was time to announce what I was having. And I'll have to send it to you so that you can see it. But it was one of I had there was this neighbor upstairs who had three girls. I said, "Give me everything and anything that's pink," because that was the other thing. I can't stand pink either, right? So I'm like, "Give me everything and anything that's pink." And oh my God, it was like pink threw up all over this photo shoot. We had the dolls, and we had, I had Ken on a horse. I had him shirtless, of course. I had one, it was just, and then it was me and Avery in a blue onesie, and me freaking out in the photo. Expecting the twin girls, and whenever I repost it, people say this is one of the best announcements, but that was just, my way of using sense of humor, being like, okay, so this is what it is, and we're just all gonna laugh right now because this was the universe has a way of laughing back, and so I'm just gonna roll with it, and I think sense of humor really is important. I think that we can almost in every single moment that we're in the middle of tragedy, there's space for sense of humor, and
Mhm.
I've always kept that in mind. So you know between a strong support system, being unapologetically selfish, and having a sense of humor, those are the things that have gotten me through the past 10 years, and even days where I'm not feeling so great and I'm feeling maybe a little sad or down or something's not working.
Oh my gosh. I was the mom who used to say, my kids come first. And then what happened was I lost every bit of my identity on
Hmm.
being a mother. And my being a mother was the only thing that I really knew because my kids came first, which meant I was the ultimate mother. And I had always wanted to be a mother. So when I had kids, I'm like, perfect. I get to just be a mother. And it did affect my relationship with, I like that when you're just that, you're just the parent, you lose who you are before you ever had kids. And you lose
Yeah.
a lot of your connection with your relationship, which is how you made the kids, so to me, I at one point turned it, and when I had a store where I talked about natural parenting and eco-friendliness and sustainability, and I had a large community of primarily new mothers, I would tell them your relationship with your partner comes first. And
Yeah.
then comes you. And actually, really, it's you, partner, and then your kids. Because
Hmm.
if you're not fulfilled, if you're not giving love from an overflow to your partner, then you're borrowing love from your partner instead
Hmm.
of doing it
Hmm.
from your own self. And then your kid wants your relationship to come first. Believe me, no kid is like, man, I love having two separate households, or like, or two separate parents. I love the fact that my family is not united. Like, your kid wants you to have a
Yeah,
solid relationship. They don't
for
want you to
sure.
separate. So it's like for the benefit, if you really think, oh, my kids come first. Okay, then make your relationship above that because that would be what your kid would want in the first place. They want the
Yeah.
unit that brought them over to this world. They want that unit to stay together. So it has completely changed for me. And now I'm
I
not
love that.
I'm not in a relationship. So now is I come first. I must come first. Because if I'm not in wellness internally and externally, then I can't be the mother that my kids need. So I have to come first. And I don't think people are selfish enough. And the word
Hmm.
selfish is often seen as something negative, as you experienced. But
Yeah.
you almost can't be selfish enough. Like a parent in particular, like try to be selfish and maybe you'll put yourself at the level of wellness that you need to be in because it's just naturally hard for parents to be selfish about themselves. So
Agreed.
for me is I come first, my kids come next, and then my work, which is, the primarily thing that I do outside of parenting, comes after that. And so I agree 100% with you. I also think that laughter is therapeutic. I think it's a modality that's a form of, ancestral therapy, like ancestral wellness. And
Hmm.
having teens, I have most of my kids are teens now. I love the fact that they'll use humor with me and they'll use humor even when I'm trying to when I'm trying to parent them about something, and I'm being ridiculous, like I'm just ridiculous. I'm saying something while I'm making some rule that makes no sense. And they'll just give me a smirk and I'll be like, all right, forget it. Like we're done with
Yeah.
this. Because it's a form of healing. It's a modality. So I'm with you on those, and the ability to put yourself first, to use, laughter. And what was your third one again?
Strong support system, right? Strong support
And your so
system.
community. Yeah,
Yeah,
in your
community for
community.
sure. I was gonna say like now, I mean, here they are. My son Avery is 11 and the girls are 10, and knowing how crazy expensive summer camp is, it's ridiculous. It's in the thousands. It's like college tuition, and everything I do is times three, right? You have three, or you have four, but
Yes.
um, but it's like, you know, my friend Christine, who's been my friend for X amount, 25 years, she opened up what she called Camp Cookie. They call her Titi Cookies. So they're like, for a whole week, they were out on Long Beach Island and they were in her pool. She bought them to, the amusement park almost every day. And then Uncle
Wow.
Ryan and Uncle Dave, who he's the guy who I said moved in with me for a year, they get to be in Greenwood Lake, because that's their, and they do it so, you know, they initiate this with me. They're like, we
Yeah.
want to take the kids. We love them. They're like, your family. We're all family. And so for me, that's just like community is everything. And everybody around me is chosen family. I do
Mm.
have blood related family members, and I grew up in Massachusetts, and and even though it's only 3 4 hours away, it's really my community here in New York City, and to no fault of my family in Massachusetts. It's just this has been my community and my chosen family, and they not only have showed up 10 years ago, but they show up today, and it's just so
Yes.
beautiful.
Yeah, because we weren't ever meant to do this alone. Like, we're meant to be supported by other people. I
Yeah.
also relate to when you didn't want girls. I actually spoke about this in one of my videos because, it's not something I want to put way out there, but I cried when I found out I was having a girl. Like, I was like, are you kidding me? Since I was a little kid, I knew I wanted to be a mom. I also had planned it all out. I was going to have all boys because I wouldn't know what to do with the girls. So I was going to have all boys,
That's so
and
interesting to me because you are a girl.
yes, but no, I'm not. I've known now because I had a community of so many moms that a lot of moms are like, yes, I'm having a girl. And they're like really excited about it. I was not that. I was a
Yeah.
tomboy. I knew how to play with other boys. I knew how boys worked. I wasn't really girly. So I'm like, what am I going to do with this? So I was going to have six boys. I had even named them. I was 15 and I named them all. And then I find out my first was a girl. I cried. I literally cried. I cried at that table when they tell you like what you're having,
Oh my
because
gosh.
I was like, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do with this? And then
Hmm.
luckily I did get to be surrounded by so many moms through that community that I had at the time. And so I started asking all of them. I said, all right, who here has had a good relationship with their mom? Like who, when they were a
Mm.
teenager, especially the teenage years. I'm like, the teenage years, who had a good relationship? And very
Yeah.
few moms would raise their hand. And the ones
Mm.
who did, I would ask them, what did your mom do to, for you to feel that way? Like what did your mom make you feel? And over the years, I did this for about 5 years because I was like, I need to get ready, for my daughter when she gets a little older. Like, I need to know what I'm supposed to do with this. And all of them said the same thing in different wording. They all said,
Mm.
she listened to me without judgment. She didn't judge anything that I said. She just listened to me without judgment. And I took that to heart. So as soon as my daughter would tell me things, I would just listen without any judgment, no opinion, no parenting, nothing. Like I just was like, yeah, and I would ask curiosity questions. How did that make you feel? And oh my gosh, that must have
Right.
been this. And I empathized and all of that. And then she's been the greatest gift because
Oh.
she keeps me balanced. I would honestly just look like a teenage boy the majority of the time if it wasn't for the fact that I have a daughter. And
Mm.
she like will tell me you should maybe put earrings on, or you should like maybe not look like a teenage skater boy. So she balances that part of me, but also she seeks me out. And I ended up having a really amazing relationship with her through her teenage years. I told her recently that I had done that. I said, the reason, like the reason why you and I had a good relationship is because all these moms told me to do this and I did that. And she goes, "What? I thought you really did agree with me with everything that I said." She goes, "So you just, there were some things you didn't agree?" I'm like, "Yeah, babe, you said some things that I was like, damn, you're like, why are you saying that to your friend?" But I did not want to judge you. This was not the time for me to parent you. It was the time for me to listen to you. And she's like, "Wow, I really thought the whole time that you were like, whatever you say and do, that's perfect."
I love that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a good reminder for me to, keep that in mind as well. My mom was very similar. She never judged me when I came to her. Even after I came out to her and had boy drama, she was always really great about listening and asking the questions.
Yeah, because that's what they need. We have plenty of time to parent them. Like, there's plenty of opportunities where we get to be the parent. But I feel like when they come to us, it's like, all right, that whole parenting thing is off, and I'm just here to be your emotional regulator and the person that holds space for you and listens to you.
Hmm.
So Okay, so then as you transitioned and became a parent again, and I believe, what's your opinion on this? I believe that grieving doesn't really end. Like for me, and I'm thinking in particular, I lost my brother
Hmm.
and it's been 11 years, and I would want him back. I would want him to be here again. I would want to tell him things that I didn't get to tell him. Like I would absolutely. I'm not neutral and say, well, he's gone and I just have no neutral emotion towards it. I would absolutely choose for him to be back in the physical realm. You're Puerto Rican, right?
Yep.
I'm Dominican. I grew up in Dominican Republic. So like there's a lot of spirituality in both of
Yeah.
those. And so like I grew up with spirits. Like my mom was a
Hmm.
voodoo, so she practiced voodoo. So to me, my brother's always been here. He's still here. He's here in spirit, and I've communicated with him and I've sensed him. But I would absolutely also want him back in the physical world if I had that option. How do you feel about that? Like with grieving, do you think it ends or do you think it continues?
It doesn't end. It
Yeah.
doesn't end. And I know this from, I mean, I lost my mom in 2000, and so that's been 24 years. And oh my gosh, I talk about her still, like this would be her bedroom right now. Like she
Mm,
would live with us, and and I think the thing with grieving that you have to be okay with is, I think what I found as a parent, or even you as a mom losing your brother, it's like whatever successes that show up for you can often feel bittersweet, right? Because maybe your brother would have been the first person you'd call when something's, maybe you would have called him this morning to say, "Hey, do you know this guy, Jose? Like, we're connecting today," and to not have that option and to see my children hit these milestones, the one that always comes up for me is like, or, what I used to think about was, that very cliche moment you see in the movies where it's the kid's first time in a play on stage, and you're sitting in the audience, and there's that moment they're looking out for you and to see where you are, and you wave back. And for me, that seat was empty because that's where Tim should
mm,
have been, right? And so from the plays, from his first walk, to the girls arriving, to even now, like Avery graduating, going into middle school, there's always a moment of that bittersweet thing. You want to be proud. I think it's always that. And I don't think it'll ever stop being that. And so, um, and I think, yeah, I think that's the hardest part. That part will never end. I mean, I'm thinking about when my kids will get married. When they get married, Tim won't
mm.
be there to walk them down the aisle, right? And or if that's what they would have chosen. And so, yeah, it never does end. I think
Yeah.
you just you choose, you get to a place where you're okay with it, you live with it, you're somewhat comfortable with it. It's always getting to that place where when you think about them, you want to, when you think about them, you smile, right? It feels it's good to celebrate them in your thoughts. That's where the shift is. And every now and then it will still bitch slap you when you least expect it. But the goal is to get to a place where you smile when you think about them.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. Where you remember like a lot of the good things about it versus just stuck in the, to me, it was pretty traumatic in how he died and also in how everything around it was. And he's got sons and a daughter, and I get
Mm.
to experience, I mean, they look just like him. So I get to see them and be like, that's my brother. And then at the same time, I think, wow, the loss of their father, like they still continuously have to experience the fact that they don't have their father. Like I would want
Mm.
him back even just for them too, like to just be like
Sure.
so much of what they've had to struggle with and miss, of not having their father present, like if their father could be back. So yeah, I think and then there's also comfort in knowing is okay that it continues. Is okay that,
Yeah.
of course, like we loved these people. Of course, we would want them back. Of course, we'd want
Yeah.
them to experience. And for me, is the comfort of knowing his spirit is present. Like
Yeah.
his spirit was the one that came to me a couple years ago and said, "You need to go to Florida. My sons really need you." And I bought tickets for my kids and for myself, and we went to Miami and Fort Lauderdale to reconnect with his sons in a closer way. And sure enough, like everything he
Mm.
said that they would come and tell me, they did while I was in that trip. So I'm like, wow, your father knew that I needed to be here, so to me, just through that spirituality is comforting to know, like, he's present. He's just not present in the physical world, but present in the spirit world.
Yeah. I mentioned early when we started the recording this podcast is that Avery is Tim's biological son, and the girls are mine. All three have the same egg donor, and Avery looks just like Tim. And at first, that was hard for me. for the first few months. I didn't like that he looked like Tim. Now I just can't get enough. And it's this
Yeah.
beautiful blessing, that he's left behind. And talking about spirituality, this is really interesting. So when Avery was probably maybe 3 years old, um, Tim and I, we would hold each other. Couples will sometimes hold hands like this or lock their hands, or it tends to be for the most part very, I think, stagnant, or like whatever
Hmm.
position you guys are comfortable holding hands, that's usually the way you continue to hold hands. And Tim and I never held hands that we held hands a lot, but the way we would do it is we were constantly weaving in and out of each other's hands in this really beautiful way. And that's one of the things I found really like magical when we would hold hands, and completely unprompted, I was holding Avery's hands when he was 3 years old in a car. He should have been in a car seat. Don't tell anyone. He was in my lap, and he took his hand, and then he started weaving his fingers in and out of my
Oh,
hands. And I will never ever. I mean, I'm emotional. I was just like, and
wow.
I just he just kept doing it. He just kept doing it for the whole ride, and I like to think of Tim saying hello.
Yes. Wow, that's so beautiful. I would have
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
have like stayed in that moment forever. Like I could
Oh my
just
gosh.
imagine how light and beautiful that felt.
It really was. Yeah. Do one thing that I struggled with, tell me if you did with your brother, is that I was, one thing that made me feel really angry is that he didn't show up in any of my dreams that I remembered for like a good year. Like all I wanted to do was to go to sleep, to have like, so I can see him and we can hang out and we can go to the beach and like do really fun, romantic things. He didn't show. I remember my mom did when she passed away.
Mm.
She would come into my dreams, but Tim didn't for like a good solid year. And I was so mad about that. I was like, what am I missing? What am I doing wrong? Did you have any
Hmm.
sort of experience like that?
I had the way that my brother died was pretty traumatic, and I was pregnant with my fourth
I
at the time, and I was relatively newly pregnant, and um, my mom called me and she told me, she was losing it. And I could make out that she was saying, your brother died, your brother died. And then I lost it. And then I
mm,
realized it, and then I spent a few days just in bed. And I had I had three other little kids and a business and, a partner. And I spent time just grieving, crying, and then I had to focus on my pregnancy because I knew that if I went deep into the grieving process, I could potentially lose my
mm-hmm,
pregnancy.
mm-hmm,
So I had to put the grieving of him a little bit in the back for until at least this baby was born. And then shortly after the baby was born, within 3 years, I was divorced. And so I had to process that. And then is when I said, now I must create the space for my brother's death. And so really it
mm,
was about 4 years later where I let it all kind of pour in. And at that moment when I would be in that, the kind of crying where you just it hurts. Like you hurt when you're crying that much. Like your whole body and your stomach, like everything hurts. And I remember crying like that on my bed. And he showed up, and it was not a dream. I was awake, and he showed up next to me, and he said, none of this was your fault, because I felt it was my fault. And
mm,
he said, none of this was your fault. It's not yours. It's not your fault. It's not yours. It's not yours. And I'm okay now, and it's not yours. And so that's where, to me, where the grieving began, but also
mm,
the understanding of him began. Like I got to understand where he was, what he had experienced, And he, little by little, was releasing me of all of that,
Mm.
while saying, I'm okay. I actually am okay. So, yeah, so it was 4 years because of the circumstances of everything.
And it's amazing how it all, it's so different for everybody else.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, have you ever done a sound bath?
Oh, I've done a lot of sound baths. Yeah.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
mean like, yeah.
I can't believe that I'm asking you that question. Of course you have. Um,
You're like, do you ever meditate? No.
by the
I was like,
way,
well, I do.
I have to bring this up to you about the meditating thing in a second, but the sound bath, I did my first sound bath. No, my second sound bath. The first one, I was high and there was too many people in the room. The second one was this beautiful spiritual. I went to Arizona, and in that
Mm.
sound bath, this was maybe 2 years ago now. uh, I had the most profound experience where I got to sit with Tim up on a ledge by the ocean on a cliff and really just grieve with him and talk to him and
Ah.
just have that moment. And him, it just felt like he was holding me the whole time and saying, you're doing great, and I'm proud of you. And I never thought a sound bath could do anything like that. And
Wow.
it really was transformative, and it was such a wonderful experience. I want to do it again.
Oh, you should totally do it again. Okay, so I wish I had just been able to do a sound bath to get that experience. I've done many sound baths, but where I got a similar-ish experience was when I actually did a spiritual psychedelic journey.
Oh
And
yeah.
I
Hmm.
did that 9 years after his passing. And I went in with the intention of connecting with him and with the intention of learning about just generationally the traumas that we had all experienced in my family.
Yeah.
And I knew that I would connect with him, but I didn't know that he was going to be the one who guided the whole entire journey. And so he
Mm.
came in and he said, I've been telling you for years that none of this was yours. None of this was mine. Now let me take you down the whole lineage to show you where it all began, where all of the different
Wow.
traumas began and originated. And he did. He took me through this whole journey and I got to see the whole storyline. And oh my gosh, it literally in that evening, it was, about 5 hours. And I do it solo when I
Yeah.
do it. It was about 5 hours. And I swear it cleared 9+ years, like years of trauma. I
Oh my
I was
gosh.
able to separate it. I understood my mother better. I understood my grandmother. I understood a whole family better because of that. It would have been amazing to get that kind of experience with a sound bath. I'd be going to sound bath every single week if that was
Oh
the
my gosh.
case.
Well, I have one of my best friends has been going on these psychedelic journeys, and I mean, and his experiences have also been very life changing, to the point where he hasn't been in a relationship in, like, I don't know, something like 10 years. And he just got in one because he was able to find a clearing of all the things that, for, uh, get rid of all the reasons why he said he would never want to be in a relationship ever again. And
Hmm.
I want to do it. I want to explore it. It makes me a little nervous, but I after hearing him a few times, and certainly like even your experience, it inspires me to explore it.
Yeah, I would. In fact, I was reading an article just today, where neuroscientists are starting to, I mean, they've always kind of studied it. It's been very much known that doing a psychedelic trip could, not trip, but really journey. Because some people
Yeah,
have done
yeah.
it and they're like, I just laughed the whole time and it was just
Right,
entertainment.
right,
I'm like,
right.
a journey so that it can help with post traumatic stress syndrome and it can help with depression and all kinds of things. Like they've known this, and which is why I don't
Well,
understand why.
Native Indian. This is what Native Indians used to do, right?
Yeah. It's like I say this all the time, this ancestral medicines never stopped being medicines. They just
Yeah.
got kind of hushed and told like, no, these are not good enough, and replaced with a bunch of other stuff that we now think
Chemicals.
they're
Yep.
better. Yeah. But the article I was reading today was just saying how when you are having a psychedelic journey, your brain almost falls apart, like it completely disorganizes. And because of that, in the after, you're more likely to change, to like receive change. And so they're like, at that moment, we can
Mm.
now then work with people to like reframe past experiences, reframe their traumas, like create new habits, like all of these things, because the brain is now open to receiving all of that. And I'm like, I love the fact that neuroscientists are studying this and coming to that conclusion, even
Yeah.
though it has always been known, right? Like a large amount of people have already always known this to be true. But if we could now make it more acceptable, where it's not looked
Or
at as
just have
something
them
negative.
validate it. That's what it needs to be.
Yes.
It just needs to be validated.
Yeah. And then accessible, because still like
Yeah.
there's some states where it's not even legal. So it's like make it where it's not an illegal thing for people to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I highly, if you ever, I mean, you have a friend that's done it. If you ever want to talk to me separate and be like, how did you do it? Because I do it on my own. I don't go off to like some other country to go do it. Like I do it here in my house, it's
Yeah.
like, and it's an
So when you say
amazing
when you
experience.
do it on your own, is it purely just you solo? Do you have somebody, one person with you?
Me solo. So what I do is I fast for the day. And I usually, for me, the ocean is like a goddess, like I'm very, very connected to the ocean. So I fast. I go out for the day and I park my SUV with I turn it into like a little mini camper. It's got like a twin mattress in there. And I go and I have blankets and pillows and my cards and my journal. And I just spend a day connecting with the ocean. I get in the water, I'll surf, like I just kind of like fill myself with nature. I come
Mm.
home. I've already prepared a meal. Usually the night before, I prepare a meal for the after. I come home and I prepare my home, so I'll have my aromatherapy and I'll use Palo Santo, around the home. I will take with the intention. I always know why I'm taking it, like I'll have an intention and then I also let go. So I have an intention and let go because you never know what the goal is or what's actually going to happen. I take it about 45 minutes it takes to kind of kick in. I love my bed, so I'll get in my bed. I'll put the right music for the setting that I desire. I always have my journal next to me, even though sometimes I'm like, I can't read it. I don't know what I wrote. But sometimes I do know exactly what I wrote. And then I just go and I let go. I let go and I go through the experience. And it's always substantial. Is there's always something. I like a lot of sometimes the things that I
Mm.
speak about came from that experience because I'll learn a lot of things about how life works through that experience. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I'll like write it down because I want to make sure that I remember it. And then
Mm.
I fall asleep. Then no, then I'll have a meal afterwards and then I fall asleep. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, I do it all solo.
I feel like
I know.
I wouldn't want to do it like how my friend does it, where he goes to this like hall with other people that want to do it at the same time and spread out. But I would want to do it by myself. And like whenever I do an edible, I don't like to be at a party or around people. I just want to be
Yeah.
in my home. So I feel like if I were to do some psychedelics and really go on a journey, I would want somebody there to help me facilitate. And I
Yeah.
know that exists, right? So that's the
Yes.
way that I
Yep.
would do it.
Yeah. Yeah, you could definitely find somebody who's just there, for you. And in case especially, I think sometimes people worry like, oh, it could go really bad. I've never had it go bad, but I think if that was the case, I would want somebody to kind of help me if I'm having, or at least just be present there with me.
Yeah.
But okay, so now that we've talked about psychedelics, then now you are in a relationship with Thomas and we get to experience, some of it because you guys show us on the social media. And
Yeah.
also, I found it interesting that you reverted back, and it was before Thomas. You know, it's like you had this amazing experience with Tim, and then in the after, it was almost like from the anger, I would imagine, from the anger of like, no, like this is the kind of relationship we attract instead, you know? And
Yeah.
then you had those experiences, and then you came back to yourself, back
Hmm.
to yourself, to the one who's like, no, this is the kind of relationship that I attract. This is who I'm truly authentically feel good with. And then you
Yeah.
attract Thomas. So how did that come
Hmm.
about, and like how is it now?
Yeah. So we ended up actually matching uh, in we ended up matching 4 years ago on Hinge, but it
Mm.
was March 2020. So
Oh,
March 2020. And
and in
so
New
we
York.
and in New York, and we were chatting this and that, and you know, at the time it was like, I mean, I was talking to, it just didn't matter, right? Like if it was somebody around the corner or across the country. And I mean, he was only in Jersey, not far. But I was like, we we were just chatting and we were really vibing and this and that. But then because it was March 2020 and I was struck with triple duty, like most of us parents, where we had to homeschool, parent, and make our businesses survive, we just veered off. And um, then comes Christmas Day of 2022, and I check out, and I'm telling you, when I tell you I have all the apps, I had all the apps. I had nine within a block. I had this Scruff, Grinder, OK Cupid, Bumble, you name it. I had
Wow.
nine. And so I opened up Hinge, and we matched once again on Christmas Day. And so we're like, okay, we should not ignore this. And
Hmm.
we he was away he was visiting his family in North Carolina, South Carolina. I always get the two confused. And he uh we had lots of conversations over FaceTime until he came home. And our first date wasn't great. Like our first date was kind of like, we were supposed to meet the next day. He had just gotten off the plane, and I didn't want to wait till the next day. So I was like, just hop in a lift or whatever. I want to see you now. And I think in a combination of like over expectations being maybe a little too high, I think we were a little bit off with each other on that first date. But we were both like, I think there's something here. I don't think he liked what I was wearing. I was wearing these corduroys, and he's like, I'm like, what's wrong with the corduroys? There were these really nice corduroys I got from Ireland. Like they were like legit and soft. And then I had this turtleneck that went, I mean, this big,
Was it
this big
black? Did you have
puffy.
a black turtleneck?
How dare you? No, it was like this big. It was like this big sweater, and it just had like lots of collar, and
Oh, I
I think he
love
was just like,
it.
and he's a Jersey boy, and I just felt like maybe he thought I was being a little too much for the first date, and I thought he was being way too quiet, and so our energy was way off. And so anyway, we had our second date, and uh, I surprised him with going on to the speakeasy that's right up the street, not too far.
Mm.
No, what he said is, I wanted to take him to this restaurant that I have across the street. It's this beautiful Italian restaurant from Sardinia. And he said to me, he goes, have you ever taken anybody there? And I was like, why are you asking me? He's like, I want you to take me somewhere you've never taken anybody else. And I was like, ooh, I was
Mm.
like, that's hot. I like that. And so
Mm.
I found the speakeasy, and we were supposed to be there for like an hour. We were there for over 4 hours, just
Wow.
going back and forth, and it flowed and it was natural. And I made sure not to wear that sweater or corduroy pants. And it was just great chemistry and great conversation. Um, and I think the interesting thing as a widower, as a parent, is there's always this sort of dilemma of what's too soon, right? Or
Hmm.
how, like Uncle Ryan, who's uber overprotective over the kids. He's like, I think you should wait a year or 8 months or something. And I'm like, I want you to meet them within a week or something like that. But I realized
Mm-hmm.
there's like a middle ground really because I want I there was one guy who I dated for 6 months, and this guy I thought this has really strong potential. I am falling for this guy. And um we he met my kids, and he was after 6 months, and he was a deer caught in headlights. And
Mm.
I was like, I'll never wait that long ever again. I will never wait that long. 6 months in a kid's life is a really long time.
Yeah.
So I met somewhere in the middle. It was like somewhere like around 2.5 months where I had Thomas meet the kids. And my kids are nosy. Like they wanted all the tea. And so they were wondering, who's that little figure coming up on your phone that,
Yep,
and
they know. They're on
they
it.
know. They are on it. My gosh. And they ended up, Thomas, we set up a date at this rock climbing. He loves rock climbing, Thomas. And so he took them all there, and it was a neutral place to all of us. And when I saw how he was with them,
Mm.
I thought it was really wonderful. But here's one thing, even before I met him, because we had been communicating quite a bit. My friend Phil, who I told you did the psychedelics, I texted him. I have this screenshot. I texted him. I said, I haven't met this guy yet. We've been chatting only for a week or so, but I'm telling you right now, this is the guy. And um, and every now and then I'll show Thomas that, like, look, just so you know. And
Wow.
it's really has felt like that. I mean, we have certain
Mm-hmm.
things that we're working through now, but there's nothing that we are working through that's not workable. And we
Mm-hmm.
have genuine love and respect for each other. And my kids are obsessed with him, and they keep bugging us on with a cute story, because you're kids and you're also potentially dating, or let's see what happens in your life. But when I asked the kids if he could be my boyfriend, I was like, what do you think about asking Thomas to be, if I could ask Thomas to be my boyfriend? How do you feel about that? Avery was like, yeah, I think he's really cool. He plays sports with me, and I think that's nice. And Lila was like, she loves it. She's my tomboy. She's like, oh my God, yeah, he's amazing. Da 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 da. London was like, don't you think it's a little soon? I was like, Mira, and I loved her for it. I loved her for it. She was keeping it real. She's like,
Yes.
yeah. She was like, don't you think it's a little soon? I was like, well, I don't think it doesn't feel soon, but I'm
Does it
hearing
make,
you.
wait,
I'm listening.
do we need to talk about this? What do you mean? Like, what do you see? What do you see, London?
I know. Let's not make this mistake again. And so, no, she, and the crazy thing about all of that is, out of all three, they're all very close with him for different
Mm,
reasons. And
yeah.
London, the one that was like, don't you think it's a little soon, is cannot be away from him. Like, she's always attached to him,
Mm,
almost to the point it's like,
yes.
calmate, you need to calm down a little bit. She
Yes.
loves him.
Ah,
So it's been a really beautiful relationship between the kids and us, and all of us together. And
yeah.
yeah, so I mean, so far so good. It's been a little over a year and a half. And but
Yeah.
I feel pretty good with it, and I think he does too.
He seems like he has just his energy that comes across is a really gentle soul. Like he
Yeah.
just seems like such a gentle being that you want
Yes.
to just be like, Thomas, I'm having this kind of day. And he would be like, come here. Do you want me to make you some tea? We'll talk about it. Yeah.
Yes, and that this man doesn't. He doesn't. I've only seen him raise his voice twice, and
Yeah.
once was at the kids, once was somewhere else, and he doesn't swear. Um,
Yeah.
and every now and then I'm like, come on, give me a coño, give me
Yeah.
something, give me like, you know. Um, but that's what I need.
Yeah.
In the way that Tim was the calm to my storm. That's how I
Hmm.
view Thomas. He's very,
Yeah.
very, very even keel, and he's a teacher, and that helps. And
Mm.
he is very much a gentle soul, and I can't even imagine him harming anyone. Like, he's just
Yeah.
not that guy. And even like from a um, from a Like, I like he is that type that is so rare that like if a hot guy walks past us, I'm like, oh my God, did you
Mm-hmm.
see that hot guy? He's like, what? What do you, where? What are you talking about?
Oh,
He's that guy that is so rare, It's
I
like he's just very even
yes.
keel and and
Yes.
I also think in our community, monogamy is something that is rare, and I think that's
Mm-hmm.
very important to him. Faith is also important to him. It's something that him and I don't necessarily see eye to eye on, um,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's his strong faith is has him be the person that he is, which is I'm all
Uh-huh.
for it,
Yeah.
and I think that really helps a lot.
Yeah. I agree. I actually believe that forms of spirituality help
Yeah,
us to be have that more calmness and that more peace and however way that looks like for the person.
yeah,
So okay, so did I know you had mentioned that you have your podcast coming up? So
yes.
how did that come to be, and when is it going to launch?
Ooh, so it's called Love Take Two, and I was approached by I've hosted a couple shows before. I did this show called Wedding Talk with her name is Tara Lipinski. She's a figure skater and a wedding planner, Jove Meyer. We did season one, and it's with this company, Love Stories, and they approached me to do a podcast after we did not renew season two, and so they were like, "We want." Um, we want to do a podcast with you. And I was like, I don't want to do a podcast. And they're like, why not? I was like, I don't know. It's just oversaturated. And I just, it's just, there's just so much out there. Like how can I find my space in that? And it is very focused on weddings, the Love Stories TV. And so I'm like, it's really important to me that I don't want to get stuck in the wedding space because I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
I've got my feet both in NYC Gay Dad and being very much an advocate for the LGBTQ plus and the Latinx community. And then I have my foot in the wedding space. And I was like, I don't want to get stuck here if I'm going to do a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to just really think about it. And I thought, well, we're always drawing from our own experiences and very much in the vein of how you even talked about how you want to how we're going to have this conversation today. When you framed it, I was like, yeah, this is right up my alley. And it's very much in the same vein of, someone being in their take two moment. And let's be real, like for a lot of people, it's take three, take four, take five, but
Mm-hmm.
they're in this take two moment that feels really abundant and full and all of these things. And but it was as a result of a take one that really did not go well.
Yeah.
And what are the lessons that we took from that brought us to this really wonderful place in our lives? And I knew from that it was sort of like, well, let's come up with a name. I knew that you know um, the way that I described it, I was like, well, it's like when you're thinking about a movie, like you're constantly taking a take in a movie, like, all right, let's take two. And so I was like, oh, love take two, and I'm like, this I can do. Like, I don't want to just interview people in the wedding space. I want to interview people like yourself. And I have some great people on board, Billy Porter. Um, uh, we have we have a couple really other people that I'm not sure I can say at the moment, but yeah, we're lighting them up, and we have a comedian uh, um, uh, who is really wonderful, and I I don't know, I'm really excited. I'm excited to see. We've only filmed a couple episodes, and we're stacking them up in August, and hopefully launching in September 1st.
Okay, perfect. I love that you're doing this. I've always said if you've had a relationship and you didn't learn anything from it, then what was the point? Like, why
Yeah,
did you even have that relationship in the first place? And I
yeah,
also think it's so important to learn what your part was in that relationship because it always takes, it's usually two people in two have to do with the reason why it didn't work out. It's almost never just
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
So it's like, what was your part? Because if you learn your part, then you don't bring it into the next relationship, and you get to
Yeah.
just process that and take from this is my new version of who I am, and then get into that next relationship. And through that, you're going to learn about yourself again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love that it's focused on the lessons that you learned and how you took that with you into this take two. And like you said, sometimes it's take three, take four, whatever. But sometimes it feels like you're take two instead, like even if you've
Yeah.
had three, four, five, this one feels like the one. I mean, I'm sure like
That's right.
Thomas feels like your take two. I love that it's focused on the lessons. I'm going to be listening to this podcast. The other thing I want to tell you, it is not oversaturated. I am constantly looking for new podcasts to listen to. I'm a
Oh, that's great.
huge podcast listener, and there might be a lot of podcasts. It doesn't mean they're quality podcasts. Like I'll listen to
Sure.
one. I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to unfollow. That's not the one. Or a lot of people drop their podcasts. It's like, oh, that was so good. But then the last episode was like 2022 and that was it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
there's always space, because
I love that.
to me, I believe there's no such thing as an oversaturation of human creativity. Like
Yeah.
there's always space for more, no matter the market. So I'm so excited that you're going to have that out September
I love
1st.
that.
I'm going to be
Yeah, it's
listening.
September 1st. One thing I wanted to share with you very quickly, there was a moment of distraction besides the sirens because I texted Thomas to bring me the announcement, and I want to show you.
Oh, let me see.
So let's see.
Oh my
So that
gosh.
was me, right? And this is me announcing the girls, and this is panning out. Like, isn't that insane?
I love it. That is so creative. Of course, that is so
Uh,
creative.
yeah, I was,
I
and look
love
at
it.
Avery's like, oh boy, you know.
Oh my gosh. And of course, all the families had all the pink things, because girls
All
must
the
wear
things.
pink and boys must wear blue.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That's a whole conversation too. Because I remember when I had a girl, I was like, why are all her clothes lilac and pink in this place? Like, why can't I get some sort of diversity in her wardrobe? Yeah.
It's
And
so
then the
true.
boys, of course.
I did a post on this not that long ago that pink was initially for boys and blue was for
Mm-hmm.
girls, and for
Yeah.
various reasons. And at one point, initially it was all neutral because that's right. That's what makes sense when you're changing diapers and stuff.
Yes.
And then it switched, and I thought that the pink blue thing was a thing that happened decades and decades ago, but this happened in the 80s. Like
Oh,
we were rocking it in the
wow.
80s. In the 60s it was all about color and pastels. It was all very
Yeah.
fluid across all colors, but it was the 80s because of the ultrasound. The way that it was colored was created in a way where people would know if pink is for blue, blue is for whatever. And so that manifested into all of the manufacturers, and they didn't want, hand me downs were a big thing. They realized that we don't want people to have hand me downs, so we have like a brother going to a sister passing down the clothes. So all of these companies were like, let's make blue for boys and let's make pink for girls. And this all happened in the 80s. I didn't
Wow.
even know
I did
that.
not know that. I did not know that. That I
Yeah,
knew
I'll
that.
forward you that post.
Okay, because I knew that purple was a color of kings before. Because even
Yeah.
purple
Mhm.
gets like, where men would be like, I can't wear purple. I'm like, okay, all right, don't wear the color of kings then. I'm like, because that's gonna make you a woman. So, yes, like that was totally eye opening for me, and it makes sense because I did not. I'm a kid. I was born in the 70s, so it was totally mind blowing to me when I had kids, and I was in my 30s, and all the whole
Yeah.
thing was like pink blue, because I didn't grow up with like pink blue. Like
Right.
we were kids in the 80s and early 90s, so that that totally makes sense why it was so new to me that
Yeah.
all of a sudden girls had to wear all pink and boys had to have blue and trucks and sports, and like the conditioning starts so early.
So early.
For
I think
yeah,
there's a good
it's
shift happening now, which is good. I see it happening now, but yeah,
yeah.
it's wild the way that we're conditioned.
Yeah, there's so much conditioning. So, all right, because we could talk about that for hold on an hour.
Uh-huh.
That's another topic that I'm so passionate about. It's like be mindful of the conditionings because there's only so much we can do at home, and then society's still going, putting from the shows they watch to the things they're taught to everything. It's like be mindful of the conditioning and just break it from
Yeah.
the get go.
Yep.
But okay. So, thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this with me. This is amazing.
No, my
I feel
gosh,
like I've learned
this was
so
easy.
much. Yeah,
And I
I
feel
feel
the
like
same
I've
way.
learned so much more.
I could sit here with you forever, and I knew that. I knew when you reached out. I was like, oh my God, yes, this is going to be wonderful, and it's nice to have that confirmed that this was going to be that this was wonderful.